There's a version of your life that looks right from the outside. You follow the expected path. You play your roles well. You meet certain standards, avoid certain mistakes, and build something that, on paper, makes sense. But internally, something feels off. Not dramatically. Not in a way that completely breaks your life, but enough to make you question things. Enough to make you feel like you're not fully yourself, even if you can't explain what that means. That feeling is where individuation begins, not as a concept, not as a theory, but as a quiet realization that who you've been might not be who you actually are. And that realization changes everything, because it shifts your focus from living a life that works to building a life that's real. Individuation is the process of becoming who you are beneath everything you've learned. At its core, individuation is simple. It's the process of separating who you truly are from everything you've been conditioned to be. From family expectations, from social roles, from cultural norms, from survival-based behaviors you developed without even realizing it. Over time, you've built an identity that, well, functions. But that identity is layered. Some parts of it are authentic, some parts are adaptations. Individuation is the process of identifying those layers and slowly peeling them back. Not all at once, not dramatically, but consciously. You start asking different questions. Is this what I actually want, or what I was taught to want? Is this how I truly feel, or how I've learned to respond? Is this who I am, or who I became to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid conflict? Those questions don't give immediate answers, but they create awareness. And awareness is where individuation starts. Most of your identity was formed before you had the ability to question it. This is where things get uncomfortable, because a lot of what you consider you was shaped at a time when you didn't have a choice. As a child, you adapted. You learned how to behave in ways that kept you safe, accepted, or unnoticed, depending on your environment. If approval was tied to performance, you learned to achieve. If conflict led to instability, you learned to avoid it. If expressing emotions wasn't safe, you learned to suppress them. These weren't conscious decisions. They were necessary adaptations, and they worked. They helped you function in your environment. But over time, those adaptations became patterns. And those patterns, well, they became identity. You stopped seeing them as something you learned. You started seeing them as who you are. Individuation challenges that. It asks you to separate the two. Not to reject everything you've learned, but to examine it. To decide what still fits and what doesn't. The persona is the version of you that the world sees. Part of this process involves understanding something called the persona. The persona is, the version of you that you present to the world. It's how you behave in social situations, how you communicate, how you manage impressions. It's not fake, but it's selective. It's shaped by what you believe is acceptable, desirable, or safe to show. And over time, it can become so integrated that, honestly, you forget it's just one part of you. The problem isn't having a persona. The problem is becoming fully identified with it. When that happens, you lose touch with the parts of yourself that don't fit that image. Your real thoughts, your deeper emotions, your contradictions. Individuation involves recognizing the persona for what it is, a tool, not your entire identity. And once you see that, you can start exploring what exists beyond it. Your shadow holds the parts of you that you've pushed away. If the persona is what you show, the shadow is what you hide. The traits, emotions, and tendencies that you've learned are unacceptable. Anger, jealousy, insecurity, neediness, even certain strengths or desires. Anything that didn't fit your environment or your self-image gets pushed into the background. But you know, it doesn't disappear. It stays active. It influences your behavior, your reactions, your relationships, often without you realizing it. This is why you can react in ways that don't fully make sense. Why certain people trigger you more than others. Why you sometimes act against your own intentions. Your shadow is involved. Individuation requires you to bring those parts into awareness, not to act on them blindly, but to acknowledge them, to understand them, to integrate them. A simple way to start this is by paying attention to your reactions. When something triggers you strongly, ask yourself, what part of me is being activated right now? That question shifts your focus inward, and that's where the work happens. You will feel resistance because your current identity feels safe. As you start questioning your patterns, your beliefs, your roles, you will feel resistance, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your current identity, even if it's limiting, is familiar. And familiarity feels safe. Your mind will try to pull you back. It will justify your old patterns. It will create doubt. It will make you question whether change is necessary. This is normal, because you're stepping outside of what you've known. Individuation isn't just about gaining insight. It's about, well, tolerating the discomfort that comes with change. And that discomfort is part of the process. Honestly, it's a sign that you're moving beyond automatic behavior. You will outgrow roles that once defined you. As you go deeper into this process, certain roles will start to feel restrictive. The role of being the responsible one, the peacemaker, the achiever, the one who doesn't need help. These roles may have been useful. They may have even been necessary at one point. But they're not your entire identity. And as you become more aware, you may feel the need to step outside of them. That can create tension, because people around you are used to those roles, and changing them can disrupt existing dynamics. But this is part of individuation. You're not rejecting your past. You're expanding beyond it. You're allowing yourself to be more than the role you've been playing. Individuation is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. There's a misconception that growth is about eliminating flaws, becoming more disciplined, more controlled, more ideal. But individuation takes a different approach. It's not about perfection, it's about integration, bringing together the different parts of yourself, both the ones you like and the ones you've avoided. Your strengths and your weaknesses, your confidence and your insecurity, your independence and your need for connection. Not to fix them, but to understand them. Because when you understand them, they stop controlling you unconsciously. You become more intentional, more balanced, more real. You won't find yourself by thinking alone, you find yourself through action. Understanding this process intellectually is helpful, sure, but it's not enough. Because identity is not just what you think, it's what you do. You discover who you are by making choices, by acting differently, by trying things that don't align with your old patterns, by expressing thoughts you would normally hold back. Through action, you gather new information. You see how you respond, what feels right, what doesn't. And over time, that builds clarity. So instead of waiting to fully understand yourself before you act, reverse the process. Act, then reflect. Because action reveals what thinking alone cannot. The process is ongoing, not a final destination. Individuation is not something you complete, it's something you continue. As your life changes, new layers emerge, new patterns surface, new questions arise. And each time you go deeper. Not in a way that destabilizes you, but in a way that refines your understanding. You become more aware of what influences you, more intentional in how you respond, more aligned with what actually matters to you. And that alignment becomes your foundation. Not a fixed identity, but a flexible one. One that evolves as you do. The real outcome is not certainty, it's authenticity. At the end of all of this, you don't arrive at a perfect version of yourself. You arrive at a more honest one. Someone who understands their patterns but isn't controlled by them. Someone who can adapt but doesn't lose themselves in the process. Someone who can exist without constantly needing to fit a role. That's what individuation leads to. Not perfection, but authenticity. And that changes how you experience everything. Your relationships, your decisions, your sense of self. Because you're no longer operating from unconscious patterns, you're choosing consciously. And that's the difference. If this kind of depth is what you're here for, real understanding, real growth, no surface-level noise, then you already know this isn't quick work, but it's worth it. So if you want more content like this, breaking down complex psychological ideas into something you can actually apply, make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who's ready to understand themselves at a deeper level. Because most people live their entire lives without ever questioning who they are. And that's exactly why they never become who they could be.